So, hi, my name's Lucy and I'm here with...
Larissa, running for president.
Hey! So, starting off, what experience do you think that you have makes you suitable to be the next president of the SU?
So, not a lot of people actually know that the education officer role is actually also the deputy president. So I'm currently deputy president of the SU, and being in that role means that I've worked extremely closely with our current president, Liam, to support him and make sure that we're doing the very best that we can for students. I think it's meant that we've had to deal with a lot of crisis situations, particularly around like the group chat incident, responding to that, making sure students are involved in that process 100%, collaborating with student activists. But also I think it's not just my experience here, but my experience nationally and internationally that helps with that. Mm-hmm. For example, last year in 2018, I was the UK delegate to the Council of Europe Congress, so I was representing all of the young people in the UK within the Congress there on local and regional authorities. But also in the NUS nationally, I was Black Student of the Year in 2018 as one of the kind of members of the Black Students campaign. So I've been doing anti-racist campaigning nationally, as well as the localised regional campaigning, and I think all of that collectively means that I'm well placed to be the next president of Warwick Students' Union.
Lovely. So obviously you've then just mentioned some of the issues facing students on campus, or somewhat broadly, but what do you think is the biggest issue for you as campaigning to be president? What do you think is the biggest issue us as students are facing on campus?
For me, it's that not everyone feels safe here, and that is really a damning indictment of Warwick, and I think the national response has also shown us that this is something that needs to change, and it needs to change now. It really saddens me that I'm the only woman running in this election to be president, and I think it kind of shows that we need a cultural change, whether it's women running to be president or running for sabbatical officer positions, running for PTO positions, in classrooms, whether it's in science, technology, engineering and maths, where they're underrepresented. We need a change where we're, condemning and stamping out racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism and all of those things, so that this is not only somewhere that everyone feels safe, but somewhere that everyone can thrive. And that means tackling structural barriers, doing the activism that counts, and really being vocal on these issues and using the power and the resource of the Students' Union to do just that.
Okay, so you've obviously, the key issue for you is safety,
Mm-hmm.
primarily. So obviously student officers have played a significant role in the recent disciplinary cases against the boys involved in the group chat, which ultimately is a lot to do with this safety issue around campus. So what would your stance have been on this disciplinary issue?
So I guess Liam and I did lead the stance on this, but my stance exactly was, let's hold an emergency student meeting. It was my idea to hold that. And for me that was because this is not just an issue that officers can face alone, because when we're talking about issues of sexual violence, of racism, of ableism, etc., it should come from communities who are oppressed by these isms and phobias and etc., who get to have the voice, who get to have the say, and we should be the vehicle for that rather than the people speaking over those voices. And so for me the main thing to do was to have that emergency student meeting, have people in the room who can tell us how to drive this work forward, and then be that vehicle. So I think sometimes actually as an officer this year I've noticed that it's not always about being the most vocal or pretending to know everything. It's about having the humility and the respect for student activists and students with these experiences to step back, listen and respond accordingly.
Okay, so you've obviously, this idea of safety, supporting students is one of your core things, at the core of your campaign. This does link a lot to the mental health of students, which that is also becoming another prominent feature of everybody's campaigns, predominantly. What are you doing to planning to do to improve this on campus?
Yeah, it's really interesting that a lot of people have put it on their campaign, but for me I've been campaigning for better mental health provision since I arrived at Warwick. On my first year I was a freshers rep on the Warwick Anti-Sexism Society exec, where we constantly hold events talking about mental health and the impacts. Again, then I moved on to, in my second year, being president of Warwick Anti-Racism Society and co-president of Warwick Anti-Sexism Society, where these conversations we've been having them, we've been trying to raise the profile, talking about the fact that out of the Russell Group, Warwick is still one of the lowest spend per student when it comes to mental health, even though it's been drastically improved by Gemma this year. And then now this year as education officer, I've been running events on mental health. Even just last night I attended an event run by a couple of students who were really interested in curiosity, and it was great to drop by and chat to them about all things mental health. And that's why I've committed on my manifesto to looking at specialist mental health provision. Like, we don't have enough mental health provision. That's an issue, we all know that's an issue. But I also think it's looking at culturally competent care, because when we're thinking about things like the prevent duty, which impacts, there's been surveys done to look at the impact disproportionately on Muslim students who then don't access mental health services at the same rate. When we're looking at the fact that we don't have any BME counsellors, when we're looking at the fact that LGBT students are being given advice that's, not fit for purpose when it comes to the structural barriers that they face, we need to be thinking wider than just more mental health provision. We need to be thinking about the communities who need certain provision and tackling that in the most holistic sense. And that means care that reflects everyone and their needs, their interests, and what the uni should be providing.
Okay, so you've mentioned, so we've talked about safety, we've talked about mental health provision, obviously two other prominent issues. Along the more sort of education side, obviously in your previous role as education officer, another issue that repeatedly seems to come up, especially even amongst first years, including myself, how the study space crisis, okay, how do you plan on tackling that as president?
Completely. So this year as education officer and deputy president, one of the things that I did was develop Book a Desk. It was actually an idea that came from a student, which was great, and I was able to work with the library and some other stakeholders to develop this service which allows you to book spaces in the library, and it doesn't in and of itself create more spaces, which is something we're trying to do separately. What this project does is it means when you're booking spaces, you're combating underusage in certain areas so that you can free up all the spaces in the library, rather than having some seats empty and some seats free in certain areas, which often happens because we looked at the library stats and we said, actually, we have enough space for more students, but we've just not used our space correctly, so we did something about it. So that's what I've done this year. What I'm looking to do in future is continue projects like these, using the ideas of students, working collaboratively with them to think innovatively about how we, improve our space provision. But also, I think it's ludicrous that we have so many corporate spaces on campus that aren't for student use, and thinking about how we tap into those, and that's why I'm committing on my manifesto to accessible study space in every single building. I think it's a university for students, so all the spaces should be for students.
Okay, so you've, in the study space issue, you've mentioned obviously student involvement and that initial idea coming from students. How do you sort of want to further that, so getting members from all over the Warwick community, how do you plan on getting them involved in the SU?
That's exactly something that I want to do. So just one example of this year, I noticed that kind of BME communities were particularly disengaged with the SU. I'm the first black woman president, black woman sabbatical officer there's ever been. Sorry, not president quite yet. I'll keep going. But yeah, so one thing that I wanted to do was engage around kind of co-creating and liberating the curriculum. So I set up the Decolonise project, which is offering paid opportunities for all students to engage with decolonising the curriculum, and there's been a huge uptake from students of colour. I think we need to be doing this in other areas, whether it's LGBTQA+ students, whether it's disabled students, students that don't have much of a voice in the SU, giving them a bigger space, providing paid opportunities, and making the effort to engage those communities. I also think that engagement comes from real, honest conversations and tackling the big issues. So when it comes to things like the group chat, we saw people come out, we saw people being active in terms of the march. I was really glad to be able to speak at that and just speak from the heart. But I think we need to be more kind of active in continuing that movement and making sure that we're bringing people together on issues that they care about, and being vocal about that as a students' union.
Okay, so rather than now focusing lastly on the Warwick community, focusing back again towards you, Lassie, what do you think is your biggest achievement whilst you've been here at Warwick?
Wow!
That's a very broad question.
That is a big one. I think, sometimes I have to look back and just think, becoming the first black woman to be a student, or a full-time student officer here, is wild. The fact that we hadn't had that in the 50+ years that this institution has existed is really, really saddening to me, and I want to see more students from marginalised communities applying, whether that's women, whether that's LGBT students, disabled students, students of faith, do you know what I mean? I just want to make sure that we have a students' union that really lives the values that it says it stands for, and that only happens when everyone feels able to engage with and access the SU. So yeah.
Right. Thank you ever so much for coming in to
No,
speak to
thanks for
us.
having me.
Thank you.